Is there a pathway forward for you with Biden?
Oh, absolutely not. You cannot keep killing people with our money and just keep thinking that, oh, we are stupid enough to elect you again, because we'll fall in line. We'll forget. This is an insult to me as a voter.
Arab and Muslim Americans in Michigan are making their voices loud and clear in regard to their opposition to Joe Biden's support for Israel's war on Gaza. In fact, today is the Democratic primary in the state of Michigan, and a coalition of Arab Americans is urging Democrats to vote uncommitted to send a strong message to President Biden about his handling of this war on Gaza. Now, leading the charge is a woman that you might be familiar with. Her name is Layla El-Abed, who is a Palestinian American activist and also happens to be the sister of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. The campaign has been dubbed Listen to Michigan. And in 2020, El-Abed backed Biden, supported him, probably for the same reasons most Democrats voted for Biden, most independents who voted for Biden, to get rid of Trump. They weren't excited about him, but turns out that Biden on this particular issue in regard to Israel has actually been even more disappointing than previously expected. Like many Arab Americans, she feels betrayed by his response to Israel's military campaign in Gaza and the rising civilian death toll, which has already approached 30,000 people in Gaza. Now, Biden would need to curtail US military aid to Israel and also call for a permanent, not a temporary, a permanent ceasefire before she could even consider supporting him in November. So this isn't just about the primary election in Michigan that's taking place today. They are voicing their displeasure with Biden today during the primary election, but if he doesn't change course, they intend to either sit the general election out or maybe vote for a third-party candidate. Now, in an effort to send a clear, sharp message to Biden, she's asking Michigan Democrats to not vote for Biden in the primary, but she also clarifies by saying the following. This is not an anti-Biden campaign. It's a humanitarian vote. It's a protest vote. It is a vote that tells Biden and his administration that we believe in saving lives. Now, since the launch of this campaign, the effort has been endorsed by progressive groups like Our Revolution, as well as more than 36 current and former state and local leaders, including, of course, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and the state's highest-ranking Muslim lawmaker. Now, volunteers have contacted more than 100,000 voters in the state. And before I give you more information about what they're planning on doing, I think it's important to keep in mind that, when it comes to the swing states, and remember, the general election is decided not based on the popular vote, it's based on the Electoral College. Biden barely eked out a win in many of the swing states that he needed in order to, win the 2020 presidential election. And if you look at Michigan specifically, he won by 154,188 votes. That's not a lot of votes. So we'll see what happens after today's primary. But I think the bigger question is, if Biden continues to support everything and anything the far-right government of Israel wants to do in Gaza, will these voters also engage in this protest in the general election? And if they do, it could make all the difference in Michigan, a swing state that Biden absolutely must win in order to be the victor of the general election. Now, volunteers have, again, contacted more than 100,000 voters of the state to let them know about this campaign, to let them know about their protest. And organizers say they hope at least 10,000 people will vote uncommitted in the Democratic primary, a nod to the 10,700 vote margin that delivered the state to Donald Trump back in 2016. So remember, Trump won Michigan and Hillary Clinton lost Michigan back in 2016. So they're making a reference to that. Now, in the swing state of Michigan, the Arab American vote is critical for Biden. If they hold out during the general election, it really could make all the difference. Arab and Muslim Americans make up a substantial voting bloc in Michigan, a key battleground state. In 2020, nearly 146,000 Muslim Americans voted in the general election in Michigan. Again, Biden won that state by a little over 150,000 votes, as I shared with you earlier. Still, many Democratic leaders are dismissing the effort, which we'll see how that works out for you. I mean, it's just typical Democratic establishment response to any type of protest by Democratic voters in regard to what the Democratic Party is carrying out. They're always dismissive, and then when they suffer consequences of that, they lash out and blame everyone else instead of looking within to see what they could have done differently in order to garner more support among Democratic voters. So LaVoria Barnes, who is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, said that she was glad Democratic voters are getting involved, okay, but she believed that they would back Biden in November once they're reminded of what's at stake here. So once they get enough of our fear-mongering about Trump, then they'll change course. I'll give you her exact quote. "Do you want a president who has worked hard to support Michiganders and make their lives easier?" How exactly has he done that? Or do you want a president who has, frankly, supported a Muslim ban? That's the difference, and people will choose Joe Biden in November.
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker, because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now.
Now today, Michigan Representative Debbie Dingell warned Rashida Tlaib against not supporting Biden because, Trump bad, orange man bad, Trump is gonna be worse. So you must support the guy who has signed off on the brutality and the atrocities that the far-right government of Israel is currently carrying out in Gaza. Let's watch.
I have a different perspective than some. I'm glad we're talking about it now and not on October 15th. I also say to my colleague, who I talk to all the time, you do not want Donald Trump to be president. If Hamas had done this under a Trump presidency, I'm not sure that he would have just nuked Gaza, to be perfectly frank. So we have very honest, very blunt conversations, but I understand how people are hurting in this community and that they are calling for a ceasefire.
So Debbie Dingell floats the notion that Donald Trump would basically start a nuclear war by dropping a nuclear bomb in Gaza. That's the kind of fear-mongering that we should be expecting from the Democratic Party as they lash out against voters, rather than, again, do a little bit of self-reflection and maybe question whether it makes sense to have the leader of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, show unwavering support toward Israel, regardless of how Israel carries out that war in Gaza. Okay, let's see how that works out for you, because here's something that I know for a fact. People get real tired of the same recycled talking points and fear-mongering tactics that we've been getting from the Democratic Party in election cycle after election cycle after election cycle after election cycle. We're not gonna be able to do anything for you guys. Okay, you're gonna be deeply disappointed with us, but the other party's worse. So you must support us. Not exactly the inspiring message that voters are looking forward to. And it loses its effectiveness as that same tactic is used over and over again. Finally, Abbas Alaway, a Democratic strategist and a spokesperson for the Listen to Michigan campaign, says, if there is a group of people in the entire country or world who most wants Donald Trump to be as far away from the White House as possible, count me among that group. What our movement is saying to Biden's team is that you are losing Michigan by making your policies synonymous with Netanyahu's. I think it's a good response, because this is their way of explaining, listen, we know who Trump is. Okay, so spare me your fear mongering. But how do you account for the fact that Joe Biden, a Democratic president, who has run on being a far more compassionate president, a far more understanding individual, how do you try to make sense of the fact that he is signing off on the atrocities that are being committed by Israel as we speak? How are we supposed to feel better about Biden when 30,000 people in Gaza gone already? Likely the death toll is much higher considering the Palestinians who have been trapped under the rubble, the Palestinians who have been trapped under the rubble specifically because they can't dig them out. Okay, Gaza ran out of fuel. They can't use the machinery they need to dig literal corpses out from the rubble. So how do you justify, as an Arab American, as a Muslim American, as anyone who really has a conscience, casting a vote for someone who has really failed to push back against Netanyahu and that far-right regime in Israel in any way, shape, or form? Barely rhetorically, we've heard that Biden has pushed back, but he hasn't pushed back through his actions. He has gone around Congress on 2 different occasions in order to supply Israel with hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid. Let me ask you something. There's a migrant crisis currently occurring. There are cities across the country, Denver, Chicago, New York. They desperately need resources from the federal government in order to shelter the migrants that are coming into their cities. And I haven't seen Biden go around Congress in order to provide them the aid they need to deal with this crisis. But when it comes to providing aid that Israel needs to carry out their war, Biden has no problem with that. See, this is the thing that bothers me about the Democratic Party. They're under the assumption that they could essentially do whatever they want. Incompetent leadership, total failures when it comes to representing the best interests of Americans, the very people who worked hard to get them elected. The black voters in Chicago who campaigned, canvassed, worked really hard to get out the vote in those 2 Senate runoff races to ensure that Democrats could control the Senate. They did that with the understanding that Democrats were gonna fight for them and get them a new voting rights bill. But Democrats didn't fight for them at all. And so the message that we keep getting from Democrats is, we're gonna keep failing you, but you have no choice but to support us because other guy bad. That message gets super boring after a while. And look, people have consciences, they just do. So if you are an Arab American, if you're Muslim American, if you're a Palestinian American and you're seeing what's happening in Gaza, how do you support the guy who is greenlighting what's happening in Gaza? How do Armenians in America, Armenians such as myself, look at what's happening in Gaza, knowing full well what happened to Armenians who were slaughtered by Turks, 1.5 million of them slaughtered by Turks in the Armenian genocide? How am I supposed to then turn around and say, oh, I'm gonna vote for the guy who greenlit the modern day genocide that's happening? And then I'm gonna be bullied by the Democratic Party for refusing to support Biden? I'm the immoral one? The Arab Americans are the immoral ones? Absolute nonsense. If Biden loses and if Democrats lose, they have done this to themselves. Lashing out and blaming the voters is so pathetic. They could change course right now, but they refuse to do so. So you tell me, who's guilty here? The voters who are exercising their freedom of expression, and also they're engaging in our democratic process. That's what voting is. Are they the bad guys? Or is it the politicians who refuse to listen to them, who have lost support among Democratic voters? Are they the bad guys? I don't know, ask yourselves. I mean, I get it. I get that people are very scared of Donald Trump. But you can't just keep using Donald Trump as the excuse or the cover that you provide yourself as you fail the American people, as you fail to listen to them and what their concerns are. And while some voters say that there's nothing Biden could do to win them back, others have some clear demands for him. Okay, so let's take a listen to what they want.
For you, Biden has a pathway forward.
Biden has a pathway forward. It's not
And what
saying,
does that look like?
That is him calling for a permanent and immediate ceasefire. The straightforward, simple answer for the Biden administration is push for a ceasefire, stop aiding Israel in their war crimes, and I guarantee you there are enough people who would be willing to deal with it and vote for the man. It is, in so many words, insane to me to have the Democratic Party and the Biden administration sit here and essentially say, if Trump happens, it's your fault.
That's exactly right. If Trump happens, it's your fault, Biden. They're making their voices loud and clear. They're making their concerns loud and clear. And if Biden refuses to change course, it's not like he doesn't know what the polling is. It's not like his campaign hasn't seen what the polling is. Let's take a look. The real clear polling average shows Trump 5 points ahead of Biden in the general in Michigan. So you guys tell me, because I am curious, Is the Democratic Party genuinely worried about Donald Trump getting elected and dismantling our democracy? Are they really worried about it? Because I don't believe them. I don't believe that they're worried about it. I value our democracy. I value our system of government. I value our institutions, although they need deep reforms. I don't want anyone to dismantle what we have here in the United States. I want someone who reinforces our system of government and makes it better. But the argument that the Democratic Party is worried about Trump getting elected and then destroying this country as we know it seems to be a bunch of BS. Because we see the trajectory for Biden. We see how he's performing right now, not just in Michigan, but in every single swing state based on multiple polls. Sure, Biden did a few good things during his term. And we have covered those stories, we've given him credit for those stories. But when it comes to major things that really, really matter to voters, like, not being the sole country on the international stage that provides cover for Israel and its atrocities in Gaza, Biden can't listen. There's nothing he can do. So it's his call. Either he changes course or he's very likely gonna lose the election. He knows that, but he refuses to change course. Very likely he's gonna lose the election. Very likely that Trump gets elected. And if that's the trajectory, if that's what we have to look forward to, again, are Democrats genuinely worried that Donald Trump is gonna dismantle our democracy? They're not acting like it, that's for sure. Anyway, more power to the voters in Michigan. We'll see how this all plays out. I love the fact that they're organizing and they're making their thoughts and concerns known. And we'll see how it plays out. I'll obviously update you guys on the story as the results come in.